I don't want to go.
Hello and welcome back to The Who Look. I have my own theory on why David Tennant was the face of the 14th Doctor again, other than what was said in the show of his past trauma giving him the face back to find Donna. When the 13th Doctor had her forced regeneration to become the Master, she arrived at the edge of existence and came face to face with the Guardians of the Edge, who were manifestations of her past self. It was explained to her that this was the place that incarnations would pass through to seal the regeneration process. But then when we go back to the 10th Doctor's regeneration, he wasn't very keen on wanting to move on, even to the point that he regenerated once before and forced a regeneration to keep the physical body by using his old severed hand. So why didn't he fight back and refuse to pass through when he finally went? Well, let's imagine that when he arrived at the edge, as other Doctors likely would have before him, was confused about where he was, shocked that he still had his body after not wanting to lose it, the manifestations of his past selves would likely have turned up, similar conversation to what we saw them having with the 13th Doctor.
But time's running out. We can't let the Master permanently hijack our existence.
Yes.
However, in this case, unlike the 13th Doctor, another Doctor took over the body rather than the Master taking over. The Guardians would have told him he has to move on so that he wouldn't ruin it for the next incarnation, just like 13th was told when she arrived. But in the case with 13th, they needed her to return so the Doctor could become themselves again. 10 would have likely argued with the Guardians about why it was unfair that he couldn't go back. They would share their own experiences with 10 to remind him of that's who they are and that's why they've moved on. Besides this, 10 would have needed a situation where 11 was in a state where regeneration energy was strong enough and early enough to be able to pull him back into his body. This would have taken many years for anything like this to have happened, due to how long 11 lived for, at which point you'd imagine 10 would have most likely moved on and made peace. But we know that David did eventually return after Jodie left. His new Doctor was aged and wearing different clothing, although when 13 had her forced regeneration and then degeneration, the same clothes were worn either side, but 10 could have been in there long enough to master the edge and the manifestations. After all, we did see that the other manifestations had also aged while being in there, so it's very likely that he would have done the same without passing. If 10 was stubborn enough to hang around for all that time and just hung around in the safe zone, he could have easily hijacked 13's regeneration process, especially as she was already weaker from the forced regeneration, and he could have potentially not long ago witnessed her returning from the edge. If this is how it worked, he could have prevented the actual incarnation from taking over the body, who I still think would have been Ncuti. So, if my theory is correct, why was he so shocked when he returned to his body? Well, I think when he forced himself back in the place of the next version, it did a factory reset sort of thing. So, when 10 wandered for so long, he likely lost himself to the point that his body passed through, but the mind stayed behind to finally pass on. This would explain why the Doctor didn't know why the body was back. Donna's theory of the face returning to come home matches with this, although I know she specifically meant to her, which could work with my theory as 10 was so desperate to get back. This could also easily be used as a reason why the bi-generation was caused. 14th wasn't supposed to look like 10 again, and after refusing to pass through the edge the first time round and then returning, has caused some issues, meaning that rather than passing on, the true body of who should have been the 14th Doctor split out of him instead. Remember, this is just a random theory, and it's likely that none of this is actually true. But it's just fun to theorise on random parts of the show sometimes, and that's just part of the fun with Doctor Who, to piece together your own ideas of what could have happened or what may happen. I also feel like we need some media depicting each Doctor as they take on the situation of arriving at the edge. Whether it be audio or comic form, it would just be interesting to delve into the world a little more and see Doctors interact with each other as they arrive. For example, would the first Doctor have arrived and met no one, or would there be a manifestation of the fugitive Doctor or timeless children? Would passing on reactivated the memories for him? If previous selves of him were there, that could have been very confusing for him. Would the second Doctor feel like he also deserved a chance to return after the Time Lords forced a regeneration on him? Is that why the second Doctor wasn't there for the 13th Doctor, other than the obvious reasons? But because he was jealous, he was also forced to regenerate, but 13 is encouraged to try to return. Anyway, thanks for watching if you stuck around for my ramblings. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.